I'm John Skinner, and this is a look at catching blackfish on Berkley Gulp. And in this case, these are 4-inch Berkley Gulp Alive shrimp in a new penny color. And I'll start off by saying that I'm really not a black fisherman. I rarely go black fishing. This was actually the first time I'd gone for blackfish in about 3 years or so, and the only reason I was out was this was very soon after Superstorm Sandy, a big storm that hit the East Coast in right at the end of October in 2012, and that storm was followed up by a monster nor'easter within less than a week after that. And the result was the waters were very riled, beaches eroded. It was a very devastating storm, and there was there were very few opportunities for striped bass fishing at this time because the beaches were inaccessible and the fishing was just generally very poor. So I just wanted to go out and bend a rod, and I took my kayak out on the shore on Pipeline. This is a relatively popular spot on the eastern North Shore of Long Island to go for blackfish. I'm in 36 feet of water. And this was the first time I've ever tried gulp for blackfish. You can see I've got a bucket of green crabs there, but I decided to start this trip with the gulp, and right away I started getting some hits, and you can see me missing the hits. And the neat thing about that was, you know, when you blackfish, you're always getting these hits from the bergals and the little blackfish and so forth. And I wasn't losing the gulp to these little hits, and they weren't ripping at the shrimp at all. So it wasn't long before I actually had a blackfish hooked up, so this was very encouraging. So these are not big blackfish at all. You can see I'm actually the only boat out on a very popular spot, and this was because the waters had just calmed down from the second storm. In fact, they're actually not as clear, the water's not as clear as it would usually be. But nonetheless, this was encouraging. It was the first time I ever put a gulp shrimp down, or any kind of gulp for blackfish, and right away pretty much I've got one. Maybe a better thing to use, a better gulp would be to use the gulp crabs instead, but this was something I had sitting in my basement that I had used in Florida, and I decided to just bring it out in the kayak and see how it would work out, and I was pleasantly surprised that the gulp worked pretty well. So you won't see any big blackfish here because the fishing was still kind of off, and there just didn't seem to be any bigger blackfish around. In fact, I tried switching over to green crabs, and I didn't do any better on the green crabs. In fact, I did better on the gulp this trip because I didn't have to deal with losing my bait. When I was putting the green crabs down, the bergals, little blackfish, whatever else was down there, would frequently steal the bait. And when I used the gulp, I didn't have that problem. They just didn't take it off the hook. I actually only lost one piece of gulp doing this, and not once did they tear the bait. This is a damp, actually a wet rag that I'm using to handle the fish, and some people take exception to handling fish with rags, but as long as that rag is wet, you're not really going to damage the slime coat on the fish. In fact, you can control the fish easier without applying very much pressure at all. So I think overall, you're getting the fish back in the water quickly. It's probably better off for the fish. So I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm looking at different ways to put that gulp shrimp on the hook. In the beginning, I was hooking from the head first. This time I tried from the tail first, and just trying different ways, and it didn't really seem to matter that much. Both ways were working. When I fluke fish, I actually used nothing but gulp for bait. I used bucktails tipped with gulp. Now, I'm not so sure that I'm ready to go out for blackfish with nothing but gulp, but at least from this first trip, it certainly seems like gulp has a lot of potential for blackfish, especially when there's a lot of little interfering fish around, because the gulp just doesn't get pulled off the hook as easily as a lot of other baits. I ended up measuring this fish, and it turns out to be a little bit over 16 inches. So that's, at this time, it was the legal limit, legal length limit in New York. And I had a couple of fish this size, so I would have had a couple keepers, but I don't typically eat blackfish, so I didn't want to keep any. I let them go. Okay, so I hope you found this useful, and thanks for watching.